Hey, real quick before we get rolling, right now it is our Black Friday sale. The sale ends at midnight Eastern on December 1st. But until then, if you go to thecoachesite.com/Black Friday and you enter the code Black Friday, you're going to save 50% on an annual subscription to TCS Plus. So with that subscription, you're going to get full access to our entire catalog of content featuring the top coaches in the game. In total, it works out to $6.25 a month. That's it. Again, you're going to get full access if you go to thecoachesite.com/Black Friday. You're going to save 50% on an annual subscription. This is the best deal that we will offer all year. So jump on it while you can and learn why we are trusted by over 37,000 coaches, representing 30% of the hockey coaches globally. And now, on to the show. I want to get to your first round playoff last year because I somehow that wasn't on my radar, and I was doing research and I'm like, holy cow, like that was a Disney movie level upset. But I'd be curious with all these stops that you've made, is there anything that's in your office right now that was in your office in Cardiff and came to you to South Carolina up to Nova Scotia? Do you have
There
any?
probably would be a few books and stuff, but funny enough, I got this job somewhat late,
Yeah,
definitely compared to the junior, like because junior you start so early, right? So
yeah.
um, we quickly rented our place out in Halifax, and I ended up sending 10 boxes through UPS.
Yeah.
Little did I know the week after I sent them, there was like a huge customs, like they've changed all the rules. So it sat in customs in New York for like we got them 3 days ago. So we have like
Oh,
10
really?
boxes in our apartment here now. Yeah. So like clothes, kids, like everything, like it was supposed to
Oh
take a
my
week.
God.
Yeah. So I would have a few more books, a couple quotes that are like, close to me. One of the Vince Lombardi quotes I love, but
Which one's that?
the any man's finest hour, just about like leaving it on the. It's probably a little harsh now, but like the gist of it, I still really like. So yeah, no, that would probably be about it. But it's all in boxes.
So often we look at, coaches and folks like yourself, and we just assume that, we forget the human side of it. And I mean, just to hear that you're moving across coast again, like, young family, the dog, stuffs like that. This is just the real life stuff that, the rest of us civilians deal with. But I'm sure everybody expects you to show up to the rink like that's the only thing that matters and that you are as prepared as you can possibly be. What was that transition like?
Yeah,
Moving
I mean
to
it's obviously been a journey going from the UK down to Greenville, up to Halifax, especially the last 2 years, just because the UK I think was 7 or 8 years, Greenville was four, going to Halifax was one, and then so right from there, you move up north to the Maritimes, which was awesome, but then right away you go as coast to coast as you possibly could. So it was fast. It really was from our housing situation, the logistics of that, to your personal items, obviously wife, kids. Our second baby boy was just born June 13th. So
wow.
yeah, it happens fast, right? And I certainly, this job certainly is not for everybody, but I'm really lucky. From the wife to my family is tons of support, and right now we're loving what we do, and I certainly wouldn't want to do anything else. I love coaching, and I think probably the second I turned pro as a player, I understood the logistical side of it and how much movement there is, and it's kind of all I've really known now for the better part of 25 years. So don't give it too much thought, but yeah, it obviously brings its challenges, and you just got to work through it. And I think making sure you're set mentally for the start of each day in the office is really important, right? Otherwise, if you don't have that little separation, or you don't find that ability to focus on what you're doing at the time, you're not going to be very good. And that's, from family time at home to in the rink planning practice, or whatever it may be.
What is that like when you show up to the rink? Like, what needs to be dialed in or perhaps written down for you to feel like, hey, you're set up to have a good day?
Yeah, I think it's just starting the day right. Whether it's a workout, do a couple different things that way to try to get my mind clear, get set, just really get focused on what I need to do. Um, I think getting in a little bit early is important. I need some quiet time for myself for sure to get my thoughts in order. Maybe it's the night before. Big note taker, as I think we all are. I just for whatever reason, it just works for me. Just getting my thoughts down. The mornings always, the hockey world, especially pro, is just so condensed to the morning, that 4 or 5, 6 hours, that jotting stuff down so I can later reflect, later in the day or in the afternoon, really helps me as well. But definitely need to have my couple, main points of what we need to accomplish or do. I need that set before the staff gets in, or before our first meeting.
Do you have any examples of like when you say like the couple of things that we have to do is that focused perhaps on say, hey, like we got to work on the forecheck in practice, or is that we need to meet with the penalty killers, or how do you? What would be some examples of the must dos for a day?
It's a juggling act, because this level, a little less practice time than junior. It happens pretty quick, so it's definitely a little bit more juggling that way. Obviously, we have a great set of coaches, so we got Hyder on the PK, we got Schuler on the power play, we got Brownie for the goaltending. Our video coach, obviously Ryan Dumoulin, does a lot as well. So everyone has their part. And then, but from a 5-on-5 perspective, obviously you got to watch the tape, and then uh, it's very easy to have a bunch of stuff you want to work on, but you just don't have the time. So you gotta dwindle it down, and what's the most bang for your buck. Would I like to do more most days? For sure. I think that's just in my DNA, as a lot of coaches. But you gotta fight that, and certainly find the themes, and then try to put that into a really good practice that moves well, and moves quickly.
So I'm just imagining you over in Cardiff, where I'm sure it must have felt like you were coaching the hockey team, driving the Zamboni, cooking the hot dogs, taking the tickets, like doing everything. And then coming to an environment now where you've got, really defined roles for your staff. And obviously you've got a whole nother staff in another part of the building worrying about the game ops and all that stuff. How have you learned to delegate and maybe let go of some things that would have been entirely under your control?
Yeah, it's been a huge learning curve, obviously, over the years. I think I'm 11 or 12 years in now, but you're right. In the UK, it was me and kind of a part-time assistant coach. Greenville was one assistant coach. I think we got a video coach my last season that helped a bit there late in the year. And then Halifax was a really great transition for me. I think that was a really pivotal year for me, where we had 5 coaches there. We had multiple general managers. So all of a sudden, I went from kind of having to do just about everything to now I was just a coach. General managers, the scouts did their jobs. I did my job on the coaching side. Had a really great staff to work alongside on the coaching staff side of things too. So that was awesome. Um, Really worked well with them too. I thought we got each other. I thought we pushed each other. So that was a good step there. And then obviously this is the next level of that with even more staff. So um, I think every level you kind of understand what you need to do to be successful, and then you just got to go and execute it, which is obviously easier said than done. But yeah, you definitely there has to be trust. There has to be you're just not going to be able to do everything at this level. There's no way. You got to be really good at your parts, and obviously that's a daily dedication, and I think everybody here is really elite. So I'm super fortunate for that.
I'm so curious now. I think so much of coaching has shifted to, you talk about the execution part. And I think for a long time, I mean, you mentioned it, where coaches they're picking the players, when they you say that they're accountable, they're literally accountable for like everybody that's on the ice, and also what they're doing on the ice. And but I sense that it's come to a point now where it's so much of a copycat league. It's like, who can just manage things the best, and give people the space to go out and execute the plan. And I part of the reason I bring this up is because I was talking with a friend who coaches over in Europe, and they were saying that they're in a new job, and the management has said, hey, we kind of like the way things have been done here. We want you to do things the same way, with the same language, the same system, same terminology. And they were like, well, I've got my own way. And they're like, you're here to manage this way. And for them, that was almost like, and I think it's almost like more of a corporate environment, where somebody might get hired at, you know, company XYZ, and they say, hey, you're responsible for this many people, and you need to have this level of output. And here's your budget, and do your thing. And so I look at I'm sure the LA Kings have a way of doing things. I'm sure they have a certain system, and they want to ensure that their players that may get called up or are aligned with that. How do you kind of blend your past experience with maybe coming into an organization that has a defined way for how they do things?
Yeah, it's definitely a juggling act. Um, I guess I was really fortunate because Greenville, for the 4 years, we were the ECHL affiliate of the Kings. So every year I was getting out here for training camp. I'd probably spend the better part of 2 to 4 weeks here. I think it was 4 or 5 seasons in a row. Obviously, I was with Halifax last year, so it was a year removed, but still, so many of the same people, from management to development staff to all of our coaches, have been here now multiple years. So I have good relationships with them. And I think that really helped me. It wasn't like I was just coming in brand new. I felt like I'd actually been here for multiple seasons. So I think that's really important to mention. But from there, I think you have to listen, you have to be willing to learn. Um, I really consider all of us at this level almost more assistant coaches to the NHL team, if that
Yeah.
makes sense in a way, right? Where we're running the majority of their systems, the majority of their language. Really, we're trying to get as many players ready for those call-up situations or long-term development. Is it a little different where you're not running everything, all the systems that maybe your go-tos or whatnot? But I think there's tons of alignment with my beliefs and the organizational beliefs. And again, even in Greenville, we were a real extension of the Kings. We were doing everything, very similar, if not the same. So it's felt seamless. But yeah, in a long-winded way to answer your question, I think listening, understanding that it's a real cohesive unit, and it's more of a flat organization, maybe is the way to put it, is really important at this level.
What would be like, in terms of the details of the game? And I want to ask you just from the difference between your last couple of stops, but specifically from you know players in the American League going up to the National Hockey League. Like, what might be some examples where um, whether it's Jim Hillier or management say, hey, we need the players to be really good in these areas or have these details for them to come up here and be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just more specialized. It's honestly real similar still to the coast or to major junior with development and stick detail or gaps or good habits. I think all those things can be refined at every level. That being said, the top end guys at this level are really exceptional, exceptionally talented, exceptionally committed. I would say it's more specialized, really trying to help them understand the role that they need to play in order to go up for, let's say, to go play for the LA Kings for 8 or 10 minutes tomorrow night if there's an injury. And I think that's a mindset that's, it's an interesting challenge, much like the kids we had in major junior last year. That we are getting guys from midget or prep hockey where they were the best player. now they got to go to us and play as a 16-year-old for 10 minutes. It's really identical in a way where, some of our best players that are playing 20 minutes a night, power play, PK, relied on in every situation, are going to go up and play a much different role, right? So how can you have an impact in those situations? Whether it's bench energy to, um, you know, grinding minutes in the offensive zone as a power forward? Can you be relied on, for a defensive zone face-off? Just those little small niches that'll separate you from the rest, and give Jim and the other coaches the confidence to use you, for those smaller minutes, which hopefully then lead to bigger minutes as you gain trust and more opportunity comes.
So like how when you go to I can imagine now like when you go to Halifax, like well it's I'm sure when you walk into that rink in Halifax, it feels like professional hockey, but these are young kids. And I think last year did you have 5 16-year-olds on your roster? Like you
Yeah,
guys
at
were
least. Yeah, I think it was 5. Yeah, no, it was. Yeah.
yeah. And I imagine when you got hired there, like was the intention not to be like, hey, you're gonna be with us for a bit and we're gonna have a young squad, but we're gonna roll it into being a Memorial Cup contender. But when you get on the ice with those young kids, I mean, I don't know how many outside of coaching professionally, how much, whether it be at hockey schools or the programs you might have helped out in, like how maybe helpful was that to work with some younger kids and maybe take you out of your comfort zone a little bit to be like, hey, we got to drill down on some things that maybe were already built into the players that I'd been coaching previously.
It was awesome. It was an unbelievable experience. I will say, as much as I've got this question, I would say that it's not that much different. I'd say at every stop I've had, a lot of different problems with each, or issues that you got to tackle, but at the end of the day, it's very similar in a way. They're still hockey players. They still want to know what's going on. They want the communication. They want the feedback. Um, I would say that the cool thing about that level is, the habits aren't deeply ingrained, and that can go either way, right? That can be a good thing or a bad thing in a way where, meaning if you got some bad habits, like, guys were correcting them very quickly. So I found that super enjoyable from a standpoint. You could, week to week, month to month, players would look completely different, right? So that was
No way.
really exciting for me and really fun for our staff, and I think I think seeing the guys how they were later in the year was a testament to all the work they put in and how quickly they improved, which was really fun. But no, it wasn't drastically different. I think communication's key, as we all know, and details key, and trying to be relatable, which maybe that's the hardest one when you know I started in the UK where guys were older than me, and then you go to Halifax, and you're probably 25 years older than some guys. So that was maybe something a little bit of a difference.
You mentioned the habits, right? And so, I mean, for example, let's say the habit I have to work on is, catching pucks in my backhand. And maybe that's not like in the team part of the practice, that's not a big focus. So with some of these, and obviously whatever my habits I need to improve are probably different in the player I'm sitting beside in the locker room. What have you learned about helping players develop better habits or improve a habit in season, while also obviously you're managing kind of the team aspect of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean that again is very similar throughout the years and the stops. I guess the difference is with this much support, you actually really have the time to dive into that. Where
Yeah.
in the UK or the coast, you're trying, you want to, you get to it, but time's a real entity, right? Where then in Halifax with a bigger coaching staff, and general managers, it allows you just to focus on the hockey side. So you get more into that. You get more into the individual meetings. You get more into individual one-on-one video or one-on-one work on the ice. Pre or post practice, and then at this level, it's kind of probably the best development league in the world. I'd say, where we have a full dev staff that they're working alongside us. They're doing their own dev days and all this kind of thing. And I mean, it's all hands on deck at this level, right? I mean, from nutritionists to strength coaches to mental performance coaches. I mean, it's awesome. It really is, and it's so I'm still doing a lot, but at the same time, there's a lot more specialized people helping, and that's
Yeah.
where the cohesive team really comes in. And I think earlier your point on the management side, it's a lot of that as well.
So, couple months in here, this new gig, you're surrounded by a lot of talented people. What's something that you've learned, or that's maybe another layer to how you coach that you didn't have going into this season?
Yeah, I think just trying to I think finding ways to relate your message. I think it's just communication, right? Literally, nothing overly specific, but I think just finding ways to relate, to communicate to players that are one step away from their dream. Right? This is the real deal now at this level. The decisions are critical of who you put on the ice, who you reward, who you speak or give good reviews on. Those are critical decisions, and I don't want to say they make or break careers, but I have no illusion of how important these positions are, and how much you know. I guess really having a great, precise understanding of each player and what they need to do to be successful is super important alongside that, and then having the ability to communicate it in the right way.
I think it's really interesting that you touched on, the communication with the players is maybe obvious, but the communication that isn't one to one, but is still heard, meaning what you say, you like who you highlight in the post game press conference. And, I'm sure that when you were playing junior or pro hockey, you probably, didn't have access or never even occurred to you to like take in your coach's press conference. But now it's all over Twitter, or X, and it's so available. And so everything you say is indirectly a message to your players. How do you go about organizing all those thoughts, especially in a competitive environment? So when a microphone's put in front of you, or you've got to have a conversation, which may seem private, could be very quickly be public. That you're maybe not saying anything that's going to a player could take the wrong way, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity to maybe send a positive message to the entire group.
It's an interesting one. No,
Yeah.
because to your point, I think that's actually been a great. Always done interviews for sure. At this level, it's another step for sure. It's no way it's the NHL, but it's yeah. You're more reporting, daily questions, daily interviews, and it's an important part of the job for sure. And you can see that with the NHL coaches. And I think going back to the one-on-ones, the open dialogue with your players, on a daily basis, so where both of you stand, you know, is really important. So I think if you built that and you have that going, then you know it probably makes the interview less important, if that makes sense, because it's already been said, hopefully. And then you got to be careful in the interviews for sure. You got to be honest, but I think on the public side of things, you also got to be a little bit careful and a little bit poised in those situations. And I think even just having the general understanding that people are listening is really valuable, right? So it might not make for the best media content, but it's probably healthy for everybody involved.
For sure. No, and I bring it up too. Like, I think that, just in conversations with like NHL coaches that have made that jump to pro, they're like, that is the number one thing they don't teach you, is just like, how to make sure that you are super clear about every word that comes out of your mouth. And that's an art form. And we see in the playoffs last year with Paul Maurice, who's got a few reps at that, but it's like, that can be that's an opportunity that you can leverage too of a coach, if you're thinking ahead. So we touched on last year in Halifax, first round of the playoffs. So I'm going to do some math on the fly. We'll see how this goes. So you guys grabbed the last playoff spot in the Quebec the QMJHL. 48 points. You end up playing Drummondville in the first round, and they had double the amount of points that you did. And you had a young team, and again, on paper, it would look like this is a bit of a foregone conclusion. Um, my first question is this: I went through like I went way too deep on this, but I go through all the box scores. You guys, I believe, got outshot oftentimes significantly in every game. So full credit to your goalie. But from just managing the psyche part of your game, I could see how easily it is for a group of young players, for many of whom it's probably their first playoff action in junior hockey. They get out of the first period. You guys are getting shot, for them to say, okay, this is going to be a really good experience, but it's just going to be an experience. This team's clearly better. Like, how do you mentally keep your players thinking that, hey, you might get outshot, but we're still going to win this thing, or hey, we're still in the fight. Like, don't base it off, you know, the momentum. Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah. Um, it's a good question. I know we were building for that all year, honestly, and I know you don't have the time, but if you look back at the games, like just about every game all year we were in. Like we had a bad record, but we were in
Yeah.
everything, like scratch and clawing. Credit to the guys, like they really laid it on the line night in and night out, and we had some painstaking losses throughout the season, a lot of them. But obviously, as all the cliches go, you learn a lot from that, and we certainly did. And I think we learned just about every lesson that season in so many different ways: how to lose games, how to win games, um, how to hang in there with teams that were, the Monktons of the world, the top team in the CHL, and they're just, you're under siege basically in the
Yeah.
D zone, and how to defend properly. And we certainly learned how to defend. And I think we just applied all that to the first round where, we were used to that already. It had already happened a bunch. We'd already found ways to scratch and claw. I think we really knew our identity, being the first year of a rebuild. I think all the honest conversations and the players really accepting that, probably around the midpoint of the season was huge for our team. Guys understanding that they're 16 years old, they're going to play 10 or 11 minutes, and they got to find a way to defend, right? They're used to having all their puck touches, all their points, used to being, the first star, and they had to be just a totally different player for us. And to a man, the guys bought in. We had a bunch of injuries in that series too, and just found a way. So it was an awesome experience. It was really cool to see the guys get rewarded. But yeah, to answer your question, it was a real work in progress throughout the year.
So throughout that season, when you're in the fight and maybe you don't get the result that you want, how do you balance that messaging? And I think you said something interesting that you just, you kind of have to have those honest conversations. I mean, we are rebuilding, and that's going to mean we probably aren't going to win many games. And I think I, I could see that's such a delicate balancing act, because on one hand, you don't want to regain hope. You don't want to say, hey, like, it's okay to lose, and it's okay. Like, this is just the results that we're going to get. But how do you balance, I guess, how do you take some of those losses and say, hey, we're going to keep building and growing on top of these, and we're going to find the little wins that, over the course of a season are going to add up to something pretty special, which ended up happening.
Yeah, I think we were really good at sticking with the process. I think we really had our day to day, what we needed to do to, learn from the last game and apply it to the next one. And I think we got into a rhythm of doing that. And, obviously the individual side at that level or this level is really important. I think we highlighted the main points for each player of what they needed to get better at. And I feel really good about the work that everybody put in to achieve those. So I think it was, you have your season, you have your team learning how to, be a team, learning how to compete when things get hard, learning to have character in difficult situations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had the individual side of things as well, with a fairly equal focus, I would say, on both. And you just keep chipping away. And it's a lot easier to talk about now than when you're living it in the
No
moment.
doubt.
It was I was fortunate. Teams in the UK and Greenville were always, we were maybe we weren't winning everything, but we were winning. We were on the right side of things most nights, so that was
Yeah.
a really good experience for me as well. How to, I really had to make sure I was in the right mindset when I was rolling in, or when I was speaking to the team, because there was a lot of tough nights for sure.
What's the self talk? You know, you lose a tough game. You've got a finite amount of time until you end up in the dressing room. You got to address your players. Like, what's the self talk to go from? Because I mean, listen, you're not in the chair you're in right now unless you're hyper competitive. And how do you sort of reel that in, I guess, and get to a point where you address your players? You're going to say, hey, we're going to maybe identify the things we need to work on, but we're going to make sure that we set the table. So when we do come back to the rink, we're not down in the dumps. So we're not feeling sorry for ourselves. We're going to be productive and take steps forward.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. I think if I was a few years younger, it would have been more challenging for me. I think my growth as a coach, maybe one of your earlier questions, really coincided well with that. I think it was like the right time in my career to understand what I was signing up for, at the beginning. I think from ownership to general managers to our coaching staff, we all understood what the test was going to be. And I give both our general managers a lot of credit. They've been there for 25 years. They've been through multiple rebuilds. They certainly had a good pulse and helped us in those situations. And then our coaching staff was great too. I think we all supported each other a lot. But I think really having that overall understanding going into the year and continuing to remind yourself that it's going to be a process, and that this will set our team up for success, long term. Because as you said, I signed up for that job thinking it was going to be, a 3 or 4 year
Yeah,
thing, trying to win a Mem Cup, and have, build it into a powerhouse kind of thing. So, yeah, in the moment, you got to remind yourself, easier said than done. I think also seeing how hard the guys played and how much they cared helped a lot. If it was a different group, maybe where guys were mailing it in and, didn't have the work and the focus and the desire that group had, it might be much more frustrating. But when at the end of the game that those guys laid it on the line, it does make it a little easier. It definitely gives you a little more comfort or resolve or whatever you want to call it. And
yeah,
yeah, now I'm definitely, I wasn't perfect either. I'm sure there was moments where I was a little too hot for the situation, but that's just again back to the competitive nature and the passion for the game.
for sure. And like I think about when you have those young groups, like you talk about the messaging with the players, and I think that there's such a you know over the 80 plus games that you guys are going to play this year. It's like it's all going to be played on frozen water. The dimensions of the rink are all going to be the same. Like not much is going to change, but the message needs to change to maybe to land at the appropriate times. How, I guess, maybe much of a benefit is it to say, sometimes the message is about the team game, and I know we all come up in hockey, and it's always it's everything's team, right? But sometimes to take the message and to say, hey, actually, we're just going to talk about you as the individual and some things that you can do to improve your game. And in your case, a career that could be life changing in terms of like what's on the other side of that call up. And I think so often in our sport, coaches are afraid because it's like everything's got to be about the team. We don't want to make it about the individual. Obviously you're in the business of developing individuals, but I could see also where just in terms of keeping it fresh, that taking a player's focus saying, hey, yeah, maybe we didn't lose the game and maybe the forecheck needs to be better, but what I need you to focus on between now and next Friday's game is this, some of those details are going to make you better.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you need that daily or weekly or whatever it is. I think that's just a huge part of development. I think to your point, that removes the wins and losses in some respects as well, and gets it back to the process, which is vital. I I think really having the ability to talk through, um, you know, each player's individual goals and having an understanding of that, and pairing that with some of their development and trying to merge it with the team stuff is really important too, especially this level. I mean, we have a real mixed bag, right? We got guys that are first year pros that top couple rounds of the draft. We got other guys that are 10-year vets that haven't played a game in the NHL in multiple years, right? So
Yeah.
it's a real blend of what's driving guys individually. And um, I think the team meeting is really difficult. It is. I think you're never going to be able to impact every guy to a man or to a person with your speech. Maybe a couple a year where you hit a home run and you get
Yeah.
everybody. But I think the reality is, in those couple minutes between periods before a game, you're probably getting the bulk of the group. You're probably missing some, and you're probably maybe even moving the needle the wrong way with a few others. So back to that, to your point, the one-on-one, that's really where I think you can save yourself and keep things moving in the right direction.
Well, so I mean, I was looking at your your roster, and I look at like your captain Joey Hicketts, former World Junior player, super skilled, undersized defenseman. I'm guessing he's probably in that sort of 10-year veteran category. Like when you get a job like this, and again, I mean, you talk about you're moving across the continent with a young family. Like a lot of the players you're coaching have young families; they got other stuff going on, and so how important is it to sort of build those relationships and get to know these people on and I don't know if you ask them directly what makes them tick or if you kind of dissect that a little bit over time, but just to know that, hey, how you can maybe tailor the message to them. Because I think the one thing I find so fascinating about the American Hockey League compared to a lot of other leagues you can coach in is that, it may not always be the best player that gets called up. Like if you're coaching junior hockey, your best players are probably going to get drafted or get the scholarship or whatever. But in your league, it might not be the best player on a given night that gets the opportunity, and you got to find a way to keep them engaged somehow.
Yeah, 100%. And still probably learning the ropes on that. To be honest, this it's still fairly early in the year, but tons of communication with a guy like Joe. He's our captain, real sounding board. Try to get his feedback on just about everything. Honestly, do I always go his way? And no, do I make my own decisions? For sure, but I think getting that feedback, it's the same thing with our coaching staff. Rely on them heavily daily, get their thoughts, get their input. I by no means know it all, and I got a lot of learning to do myself. But I think it's fun trying to get you know you got to do the relationship thing for the job, but I think I would argue all of us in this probably do it because we really love that side of it. So
Yeah.
it's not really. I'm not coming in every day going, oh, I got to talk to this guy for my job. Like I'm doing it because I want to try to get to know him, or I want to try to figure out how we can make him a better hockey player, right? And um, I think time is a limiting factor again. I think you're never probably going to get to know every player to be, your best friend or know them inside and out, but I think you can get it to a level where they understand that you're really into their development and into them as a person, and I think that in itself goes a long way. Again, easier said than done. I also don't think you're going to have everybody like you as a coach. I think that's the reality of the world now. I think there's so much going on, and you gotta coach those guys too.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting you said that, and I think like I think that it's like everybody wants to be liked, right? Like that's human nature, and it's unreasonable to think whether you're running a business, a hockey team, whatever, that there's just going to be this equal level of I guess relationships or how people feel about you, and how do you how do you maybe, I don't know if you acknowledge it necessarily, but how do you find a middle ground to say, hey, like, maybe this relationship with somebody's a 10 out of 10. Um, and not everybody's going to be a 10 out of 10, but we don't want any 2 out of 10s either. Like, we want to at least have a baseline where everybody's, at a certain level. And while it may not be perfect, it's functional and it's productive. Like, what are the must haves in the relationships with the people around you?
Yeah. I think my mind goes to the fact it's like the evolution of a coach again. Of
Yeah.
you have to go through those talks, those failures, those issues to get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Really to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I remember first years overseas just dreading having to talk to a guy that you need to talk to about something, right? And you're just like, oh,
Totally.
this sucks, right? But uh, I would say almost always it worked out for the better, being open with each other and knowing where each other stands, even though maybe you don't agree with each other. Now this far along, it definitely, I wouldn't say it's natural, but you build a resiliency to that uncomfortable part of it, and you just get it done. But I think it's really important to try to relate to everybody. There's so many different personalities now. We have so many players from different nationalities and backgrounds, and like you said, kids or single young guy living in LA. Like there's a lot of different elements to it, and um, you know I don't think you're going to get it perfect, but trying to find that common ground where everyone can work together and getting feedback and all those types of things.
You mentioned that, sort of that evolution of a coach, and that there's those hard things you just have to go through to learn. Like, if I didn't know you and I just went on like your elite prospects profile and I followed your coaching journey, it'd be really easy for somebody to say, oh, like, Andrew's just like, it's just his career is like up and to the right. Like, he's just starting in UK and he's come over here and he's just been successful. He's been coach of the year. He's first round upset and all that. And I think anybody that's been around the game knows that that's all surface level. Like, you don't get to this level without getting in the mud, getting stuck in the mud sometimes. Like, what are maybe some examples of just, other maybe either hard lessons or some adversity that you've had to face that you've had to figure out?
Yeah, it certainly hasn't felt like it's all the way up. That's for
Yeah.
sure. It's challenging. It's a daily commitment and a grind, as all the coaches that I've listened to on the show have. We're all the same, right? We're all in it. We're all in it because we love it, but it's a hard profession. For me in the UK, we had a ton of success there. We had awesome teams. I was really fortunate with the players we had and the organization we had, and we were able to build it up all together and win a lot. And by the year 6, 7 or so, I loved it. I could have stayed there the rest of my life, if I could live another life, for sure. My wife's from there, all these things. But I wanted to see if I could make it and chase my dreams. But it was difficult when you're overseas like that. You're sort of forgotten about in North America, and it took multiple years to even get a sniff to be looked at to get back, right. And finally got the big break for Greenville, which was unbelievable. But yeah, it was, that one comes to mind where you're doing all this winning and things are going so well, and you think it should be. I think maybe you don't, same as a player, you don't realize just how many good coaches and how few jobs there are and how difficult it
Oh,
is.
it's unbelievable.
And then, similar to being in Greenville, doing a good job there, I think for the most part, having competitive teams and you're scratching and clawing, and then, eventually you get your break, which I've been really fortunate with the Halifax and now this. But yeah, it certainly didn't feel like all just an easy path. That's for sure.
I'd be curious, like, and I mean, I get a lot of calls and emails from coaches that are like, hey, like, I'm in North America and I want to get to Europe and I don't know how, or I'm in Europe and I want to get over here, or I'm in junior and I want to get to pro. And it's, and everybody says, oh, you just go network and all, but I mean, that's a little bit of lip service. Like, it's hard. Like, I don't know how much you're able to share, but just in that journey of like, getting the opportunity in Greenville, like, was that as simple as sending out resumes, or is there anything that maybe you did that you, in hindsight, you're like, man, that maybe helped me stand out a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got a network for sure. I mean, there's no illusion to that. Especially with playing career only being okay. I played a year and a half in the A. I think you got to grind and always tried to learn off other coaches. I tried to reach out to some guys that I would know, a little bit. Maybe they're not best buddies, but guys that I knew a bit back when I was over there. That had made transitions from European hockey to North America, just to learn about the path and if it was possible, what they did, those type of things. I think I learned a lot from that. I think you also build your network that way. And then the Greenville job, funny enough, I mean the owners are heavily involved in NASCAR. The president that hired me at the time was in the NFL for about 12 years before he was in hockey for
Oh, no
maybe
way.
eight. He was maybe in hockey for about 8 years when he hired me, I'd say. Um, and I was really lucky in the sense that he wasn't maybe enamored by, resume, NHL, or whatever it may be, because he
Yeah.
had kind of done all that in the NFL, right? Like it was his the ECHL teams weren't like they were a big deal to him, but he wasn't like he was just looking for the right guy. So that really was my big break in the sense that when he interviewed me, you could tell we had rapport. We saw eye to eye on a lot of things, and I think he was really open minded to maybe a different resume, right? A guy that had coached in the UK for 7 years isn't
No way.
exactly a normal resume, right? So that was important. And then a couple other people that were tied into the affiliates. There was Florida. I think there was a scout mixed in, someone with the LA organization because it was kind of a joint affiliation at the time. There was a couple people that knew me well enough to kind of vouch for me a little bit when they were doing the references and all that. And that, yeah. And next thing you know, I got the call, and it was a yes finally.
Have you been to a NASCAR event?
Oh yeah, I went
I
to one
want to go
in
so bad. How's
yeah,
that?
went to one in Charlotte a couple summers ago. It was wild. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, we got they have three cars in the NASCAR Cup Series, so we're in the garage, we're seeing it all. Like we're in the pits, like it was
Ever take
awesome.
one for a spin?
No, not yet. I've been right up close and sat in one, but I've never driven one.
Oh man, that's wild. That's wild. Do you know who Mike Leach is?
The name, yeah,
Okay, so Mike Leach, rest in peace, college football lawyer turned college football coach, an offensive savant. And there's this, and I'll tell you what, for anybody listening, if you're having a bad day, go on YouTube and watch Mike Leach press conference compilations, and it'll bring a smile to your face. It was amazing. But he has this story about, I think he was coaching in um, Kentucky, and they was pretty sure that the other team was perhaps like stealing signs or had some intel on their team. So they do like the walkthrough. They show up the day before on the road and the walkthrough, and he prints up the play call sheet and he laminates it like it's the real thing. And he drops it and he walks past like some of the people setting up for the other team practice, and he drops it on the ground kind of like it fell out of his pocket. And the story is that the other team says, we've got Mike Leach's, like, we know all the plays he's going to call. And so of course they show up the next day for the game and it's completely different, and they win the game. I bring this up because I look at your schedule, like you're going to play San Jose 4 out of 5 games like around Christmas, and most of your games like it's back to back. And I sense you play, most of your schedule is divisional. um like you've only been in the league 2 months, you must know everybody inside and out by this point. I mean, with the video and everything, like there's no secrets. Like, do you like, what are some of the margins that you can take advantage of? And then maybe the other part of that question is, do you ever throw any curveballs, like leave the play call sheet or say, hey, we're going to do something just wild off a face off to throw everybody off?
I might have to now. I think that's a heck of an idea.
Everybody's trying to figure it out. Yeah.
What's funny about that is at this level, like we have so much staff, so much support. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just coaching. Like I'm compared to where I was with the UK for so many years and then the coast, like um, I was always really worried about leaving like a pre-scout behind or something in the room for another team to find. So at those levels, I'd always be the one to rip it down. Where now I kind of don't do anything, right? So
Yeah.
I'm always asking our equipment guys or some of our other staff, like, hey, did anyone get that? Like, did anyone take our pre-scout down? Like, so they always tell me yes. So hopefully it's happened. But to answer your question, it is a unique situation.
Yeah.
First of my career for sure, in the sense that you know, we're we're running LA systems for the most part, as is I think just about every other team in our
Sure.
division for the pretty much, which
Yeah.
makes sense when you're trying to develop guys for the NHL. Um, so I'd actually argue so far we're only 15 games in that there's less adjustments 5-on-5 anyway. Special teams I'd say is different, but well, power play maybe not PK, but um, there's less adjustments than there was in the queue. In the queue, you're getting some coaches that are changing a lot of stuff up. They're really going. Same in the UK or when we were in Champions League in Europe. You get some real different playbooks and systematic schemes. Where here, I'd argue it's a little bit less so far. Um, and at the same time, 15 games in, we've been just so focused on our own team and getting our guys to play the right way to the LA Kings standard. And then also their own identity that takes up the majority of our time. Do we look at the other teams? Of course. Do we add some little wrinkles in? Of course. But so far it's really been about consistency and getting to our game and each individual player's identity, which has been the most important, which has been a little bit, I wouldn't say it's different because you always got to do that, but I'd say elsewhere there's definitely been a little bit more wrinkle and, you know, maybe not mess with other teams, but yeah, I definitely love the adjustment side of things, especially earlier in my career.
Well, so um, maybe an opportunity to give a shout out to a former coaching rival, but is there anything you saw last year in the queue or perhaps overseas from like a system or tactical standpoint where like, man, I can't pull that out now, but I got it filed away. Like this is a little wrinkle or something new that I'm going to keep as an ace up my sleeve for down the road.
I think everyone's sort of seen everything at this point for the most
Yeah.
part, but you know, I think in the queue there was some real, you know, diverse ways teams played, and you know, I think of Jim in Charlottetown there, like really had his team. The way they competed night in and night out was really impressive. Um,
He's
you
coming on in a
know,
few weeks. Tell me more.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know him that well. Our the new head coach in Halifax, Brad McKenzie, my associate from last year, they're really good buddies. They used to coach together for some years there in Charlottetown. Has always raved about him. So you can just tell by the way their team plays, right? And there's a bunch of those. Hate to say it, but the Floridas of the world in the ECHL for sure. We
Yeah.
battled them all the time, but Brad Ralph and those guys, the way they played systematically was impressive. The way they recruited as well. And in the UK, some of our rivals for sure. There was multiple coaches over there. So like anything, you take a little bit from each team, and um, at this level, I mean, it's so elite that you can just tell like the hours the coaches put in, their dedication, how well organized the organizations are. Like it's really impressive. It is microscopic now in the A to win a game. Like it could be just a couple plays that makes all the difference.
How do you like you talk about consistency? How do you you know I I'm sure with analytics that there's things that you might look at to evaluate that, but as you said, like so much of this is it's like it's taking your eyes off the road for a second, and you're at a level where the players are so elite they can just you get exposed instantly. How do you build consistency into your game? And I mean, I know you mentioned that you guys just lost two in a row. Like, how do you make sure that the two losses in a row ends and you get back on track versus, I think, I mean, if you've been around this long enough, you know how easy those things can slide.
Yeah, I mean, the analytics is important. I think it's an interesting part of it now, the last 5 years or so, in particular, the way it's developed. I think that's, you can definitely use that for sure. It's a good snapshot. Is it everything? No, it's a real tool though. And then from there, just when you break the video down, you can see. And I think every organization has their couple real keys on how their team plays, and we're no different, right? We have a few things that from LA on down that we do really well, and when our game's in order and we're doing, playing the right way and playing to those identity pieces, a lot of the other parts of our game fall into place. Obviously, that's not the recipe for every night. Other things can go
Yeah.
wrong. Maybe it's game management. Maybe it's shift length. Maybe it's you know special teams. There's a whole array of where it could go wrong. But back to kind of that earlier question of pinpointing what those few things are and going back to that and videoing that up or working on that in practice when you can goes a long way. Again, would love to do it all. Would love to focus on everything, but it's just not feasible.
If I talk to your players and I said, hey, like what's the staple of an Andrew Lord practice, or what's the things that they maybe get juiced up for a little bit in practice, what would they say?
Yeah, I would hope that it's, it all makes sense. And what I mean by that, there's a linkage between what we identified in our gameplay, whether it's last game or the last 5 games, and the real clear from the video to the practice plan, it's all linked. I would really hope for that. I don't want to guarantee that. I'm sure people have their own opinions, but that's a real staple. I think that's a real key. It's not just, pull 5 drills out and go roll practice as much as how much easier that would be, and that would probably let us all play some golf. But we're taking our time, right? Like, we're going from the video to practice and trying to piece it all together that way. Um, After that, I would say I would hope they would say it's challenging. We're trying to take them outside their comfort zone. Again, that's not something that everybody loves, but I think that's a really important piece. Hopefully tempo for sure, hopefully lack of board time, all those things we're trying to push. Is it perfect? No, but you just chip away at it every day. But yeah, up tempo for sure, I'd say challenging. uh Definitely, they probably want a little bit more flow, I would say. that
Who
would that
doesn't?
would be a
Yeah.
knock, but I've listened to that now for a long time.
Um, how do you keep how do you keep players, or get players, I guess, out of their comfort zone?
um I think through the drills themselves. I think
Yeah.
the details within the drills, more importantly. I mean, as everyone says, you can turn any drill into a good drill. You really can, but you can also turn any drill into a bad drill for sure, on how you do it, the execution of it, the route running. Are there the little details within the drill? You have to have those, I believe, at this level. And again, that's gets harder as the season goes when the games get stacked on top of each other, and there's fatigue, and it's maybe groundhog day for some guys. It's finding ways to still keep that detail, where at the same time there is a little bit of fun, there's a little bit, there's still some passion, there's got to be compete mixed in there too. That probably helps as well. But yeah, it's an ever evolving thing. I think you're always learning on how to make it better.
So I think it's interesting you talk about like linking up the practice plan, and part of that. So like I mentioned before we hit record, like I coach my little guys U9 team, so fun. And so coming up this weekend, Friday morning and then Sunday morning, we have back to back 1 hour practices, just our group on the ice. Doesn't happen a lot. And they're little kids, so like we got to work on everything. Like we have to work on everything. But I know that working on everything's not gonna help. Like we got to kind of narrow the focus and stack, as you said, we got to have that linkage. And I even think at that age, the kids can feel it when the dots are connected and they're building towards something. But it's so hard to pick out. Okay, today we're just going to work on these things and we're going to ignore everything else. How do you, um, again, just the stakes being what they are at your level, like how do you get comfortable with maybe saying, hey, like, yeah, maybe we got to pick between the power play and the defensive zone today, and the defensive zone wins.
Yeah, it's really tough. It is. It really is, especially when you want to win so bad and you're detailed and you're into you have so much passion for the game and you want to help the guys, right?
Yeah,
It's really hard. You have to let go. You got to listen. You got to listen to your coaching staff as well, and you got to delete some stuff for sure. And you have to pick the couple or the one main thing. And I think the more you do it, the better you are at it. The more you learn what your group needs to tick, that also will help you make the right decisions. But yeah, it's hard. I think just really kind of back to that fundamental understanding when you take the job or the assignment to know, you know, doesn't do you any good by just shooting yourself in the foot by overwhelming them with everything, right? You're finding that line. Are you up against that line a lot? Are you over that line once in a while? Probably, but at the end of the day, if they don't understand or they're not able to retain it, it does you no good anyway, right? So yeah, it's definitely a juggling act, and something I think you learn year to year, and you do have to you do have to fight off the element of wanting to just overcoach for sure.
I think one of the interesting aspects of doing this show is that you look at the individuals you're talking to and you go back and you look at their career, and sometimes what becomes our superpower wasn't intentional. It's just the nature of your respective journey. And I look at you, and you start coaching in Cardiff, with has I would imagine a very unique culture, just living in the UK. And then you go to South Carolina and you're going to NASCAR events, and you're soaking up that, and where hockey's probably not ingrained in the culture. But then you go to Halifax, where I'm sure that it was probably impossible to go get a carton of milk on the way home from the rink without people quizzing you about the last game. And then you're in California, which just seems like that's totally different. Like, just in terms of like how there's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers. Like how valuable, you talk about how diverse your dressing room is. How valuable is it to have to just yourself show up in these different cultures, meet different people, and take that skill and apply that into your day to day with your players.
Yeah, I think above all else, that's probably been one of the biggest parts of my own development or other coaches that have done the same thing is seeing all the different, it is cultural pieces, ways, coaches coach against you, the level of play in the league, the style of play in the league. I think having to work and navigate through all those things, you're only going to get better by doing it right. And um, I've been, as much as I would have, parts of me would have loved to stay at every stop that I've been. Honestly, I've been so lucky where the
Yeah.
UK was unbelievable to me from their organization. Same with Greenville. Obviously, the awesome climate there too, and that city is just booming. And then Halifax, just the ultimate hockey city. I mean, we were sold out every night. It was unbelievable. Like that place is fantastic as well. And but deciding it myself and along with the significant other, like for
Yeah.
my development, you gotta move. You gotta chase it, and I think as you do that, you learn a lot, right? And that's not just chasing it aimlessly, but tactically doing it at the right times. I think you're going to evolve as a coach, and yeah, the different culture pieces to it, the different levels have definitely helped myself for sure.
Totally. So, Andrew, we're gonna end here. So, I think we were texting back at the end of summer. You just got the gig, and I was mentioning that and you're not at this stage yet because your kids are really young, but there's going to be this magical thing that happens. Your kids are going to get old enough that you can actually go on a trip for a couple nights with your wife again. And you're not like, you can actually go to a restaurant and you're not worried about like your kids embarrassing you.
Right now, that feels
Like
yeah,
you're not at the going out
I
for
don't
dinner
even know
stage
what
right now.
we laugh about that. Yeah,
Yeah. So we
so
get to scoot down to LA for a couple nights. Grandparents come in to watch our little guy, and we go to the Oasis concert just down the road at the Rose Bowl, which was really cool.
yeah.
But of course, we're planning this trip, and I'm like, honey, I'm like, USC's playing on the Saturday. She's like, don't care. We're not going to a college football game. I'm like, honey, like LAFC is playing a soccer game. She's like, we're not going to a soccer game. That's not what the trip's about. But given where you're at and just the amount of teams and coaches and sports going on, like if you had a free pass to go watch a practice and hang out with any coaching staff in the LA area, who are you going to go hang out with?
a tough one. Oh
Yeah.
man, I think to your point, like the hotbed of sports here, it's incredible. I mean, we got coaches, players are getting to all sorts of games. One of our coaches got to the Dodgers Jays game. I think it was game three. Might have broke the bank account doing it, but he got there. And then another coach yesterday or 2 days ago went to the Rams game. It's unbelievable. I definitely know next summer when there's more time, like I'm going to try to target all of that a little bit more. The Chargers practice facility and the Lakers practice facilities are, within a pitching wedge of us too. So
Oh,
like
no way.
trying to get in, to one of those would be awesome. I don't know. I don't want to leave anybody out with that answer, but I definitely try to get to a couple of them. And I think the knowledge you can learn, like I'm really into other sports for sure, like
Yeah.
coaches, I should say. I think there's so much that can be learned from that. And that's definitely a thing that I would love to try to do if time permits.
Any books, resources, interview, or any coaches that you kind of just pay attention to from other sports that stand out to you?
Yeah. I mean, the, more teams, I would say. I was obsessed with the Patriots in a way. Brady, Belichick on how they did things. The All Blacks, obviously, being in the UK, rugby was a huge element, right? So that was great. Um, obviously the Bulls, studying all that. The Muhammad Ali's of the world, those style of books growing up all
Yeah.
helped me a ton. When you're in the thick of it now, definitely could do some more reading for sure. I try to listen to, your podcast, a few of the other coaching podcasts in the world. Those usually give you a quick fix when you can when you're working out or something. But yeah, I'd have to probably stop and think. There's been so many along the way. I think they've all probably had a little bit to do with my growth as a coach for sure.
Totally. Well, hey, Andrew, it's I'll tell you what, from our perspective, and I know I'm trying to think, man, like um the first time we got connected, you were definitely in Cardiff. I know you were on the show before. It might have been at one of our events, but it's been a lot of fun just watching your journey and how things have progressed. And yeah, we're rooting for you, man. Thanks for taking time today.
Yeah. Thanks again. Appreciate it.